Commissioners Finance Committee to order, and it's back feeding us.
We can hear you twice. We don't hear it one first time, right?
It's called the metaverse.
All right. So the meeting's called to order. Please call the roll.
Commissioners Hvac,
Here.
Colwell, McGillivray,
Here.
Powell, Charles,
Present.
Long,
Here.
Moss,
Present.
Markham.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Commissioner Cavell, your goal.
Good looking out, thank you.
Next up, we have approval of two sets of minutes from September 14th to 29th, moved by Commissioner McGillivray, supported by Commissioner Moss. Any comments? All in can I do it all in favor?
You can do them either way.
Yeah. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Minutes are approved. Next up, we have approval of today's agenda. Commissioner Moss, supported by Commissioner McGillivray. Any comments on the agenda? All in favor of today's agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay. Next up, we have public comment. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to address this committee this morning? Seeing no one, I will close our first public comment and move on to communications. I need a motion to receive and file from Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Moss. Anybody have anything they want to add? Okay, then let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
You guys have yours? I don't have mine.
Just one
Okay.
second.
All right, just making sure.
I started that.
She's working on it.
All right, here we go.
There we go.
I got it now.
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, the communications are received and filed. Next up, we have a presentation about Oakland County facility capital needs. Our presenter is Deputy Executive Hillary Chambers, April Lynch, Ed Juss, and Kyle Jen. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. We are happy to be here. Bring you such wonderful news on this gray fall day.
Well, at least we know what the news is, right?
Sorry, Megan. So, seriously though, we do appreciate the opportunity to kind of make a public presentation about something that some of us individually have talked about, but we really feel is of critical importance to the county, not only in terms of the well-being of our employees and the people that we serve, but also in terms of our fiscal health and our fiscal future. So we're going to kind of run you through as a team this presentation on the capital improvement plan analysis that we asked Plant Moran to do. You'll remember it was really just a few short years ago when County Executive Coulter was appointed. There were a few lingering things that people thought we would take to the rating agency and go out to the market to bond for. One was the radio project, which you all supported, and we ultimately did go and receive financing to advance the radio program. But we thought in terms of the capital needs, it made sense to first do an assessment of all of our needs so we knew what we were grappling with. So with the board's support, we issued an RFP and brought in Plant Moran to do that analysis. And I think you will find that it is, very comprehensive, very daunting, but really important for us to understand the scope of the county's capital needs. So April is going to go over just the scope of the work that we asked Plant Moran to undertake.
Thank you again, April Lynch, Deputy County Executive. One of the things that was really important to us is make sure that we, again, as Hillary said, understood what we need now and what we need in the future as we start to prepare for our CIP process. One of the things that we wanted to make sure is a much greater overview of our buildings. So one of the things that we had is we had Plant Moran come in and do a major study as it looks at all of our entire campus. For those that don't know, we have 40 buildings that are owned by us. We have just under 2 million square foot of building space, which is pretty significant. We have 600 acres of land and 30 miles of utilities. So it was pretty intensive. And then one of the things we wanted to take a look at once they were doing that analysis is break it down for us, understanding what we need to do today, what we need to do tomorrow, and what could wait until the future. And so what they did is they came in and looked at, they toured our buildings, they looked at all of any studies that we had done over the last course of a few years, conditions assessments, paving assessment, it was everything. It was more than just buildings, it was grounds as well. And then also what we wanted them to do is not only provide that plan, but if they could please provide costs of what that could look like. And what they also did for us is obviously costs today are a little different than they might be in 10 years. So they provide what we call escalation costs as well of what the value of some of those investments would look like in 10 years from now. And then also, as we talked a little bit before, more of a plan as it relates to prioritization. So critical needs, things that could be deferred for the next couple of years, and then those pieces of the puzzle that could wait for 7 to 10 years from now.
Now, this PowerPoint is equipped with a little bit of back and forth, right? So, and I'm not quite sure how to deliver this question because I try to come up with a way to think of it in a funny way. Like, is the average age of a county building older or younger than Hillary? But that doesn't really seem to be very exciting. So then it is, can you guess what the average age of a county building is? So what's the average age of a county building? Anyone have well, if you don't know already, know
60.
the answer?
I'll just throw out
Well,
60.
definitely older than Hillary, okay. 60. The chairwoman says 60. 54 years old.
I guess 40.
Yes, 54 years old.
She won.
So, and as you know, with aging infrastructure comes more cost. So that has to be taken into account. And I think now we turn it over to
Ed, yep.
Sure. So what you see here is an example of the assessment that was done for each one of our facilities. And as April mentioned, it was also done for our grounds and utilities. But this is the old Pontiac Health building. And you can see on the right-hand side, the categories that they looked at. So there's site, there's building envelope, which is the building exterior, the roof, the facade, the doors, the windows. Next slide, you can see interior finishes, plumbing systems, HVAC systems. And on the next slide, electrical systems, security and safety, any abatement that would be required, furniture and equipment, and then technology. And then the last section would be owner's costs, AE, fees, contingencies, permitting, et cetera. And then at the top, towards the right, the columns, you can see where they prioritize the needs that April had mentioned earlier, where there's a critical need of what should be done in the first 3 years, and then what can be deferred to 4 to 6 and 7 to 10 years. And again, this was done for all 40 of our facilities as well as the grounds and utilities, and it was all of those numbers that were compiled to come up with the big number that you're going to see soon.
So we always let Kyle get the big numbers.
Right. So this table here, takes all those numbers that Ed just talked about for the health center, and then, this breaks it down by building. So all 40 of our buildings, plus each of those categories Ed just talked about. You can see at the far right, right column, almost every building has a price tag of $1 million or $2 million, and it goes up from there. We wanted to kind of highlight some of the bigger areas that we're going to have to figure out how to tackle. So the Children's Village, there are 9 different buildings that are part of Children's Village. So if you add those up, you're talking about approximately $30 million. The courthouse building here is kind of the, perhaps the biggest elephant in terms of its age and some of the limitations in terms of space and so forth. That's up at $95 million. The sheriff's existing buildings, so the jail and their administration building and the couple other facilities they have, those are big numbers that also get you up over $100 million before we even talk about any potential new facilities. And then lastly, the health center buildings in total are about $50 million. Those are some of our older buildings that factor into that 54-year average. So then some charts to kind of bring, the numbers up by category of cost. This first chart shows you how those different categories break down in total across all the facilities. So again, the site work maintenance, which is, parking lots and sidewalks and steps into buildings and so forth, is up over $60 million. Building exterior maintenance and repairs, which is roofs and windows and doors, is also $60 million. I won't go through each of these bars, but the large bar there is the HVAC systems, again as a function of having older buildings, and that just always being the most complex and expensive part of the inside of a building. Smaller numbers in the scope of this chart, but still significant, are the $21 million for life, safety, and security, and $24 million for ADA, which, I think certainly as we move forward and prioritize, those two categories are going to have to be at or toward the top of the list. And then that last bar of $137 million, this is kind of a technical thing, just the way, in terms of the way plant laid the costs out. That $137 million really needs to be spread across each of those other bars, because those are, architectural and engineering costs, construction management costs, and, and the contingency amount that needs to be applied to each project. So each of those bars that left really needs to be increased by roughly a third as that 137 gets spread. So in total, this is what Plant is calling our non-discretionary needs, things we need to do just to get our current facilities back up to standards, and we're at $549 million there. If you break down those non-discretionary needs by time period, we've got a balloon in the next 3 years of about $184 million. That does go down a bit, by more than half for the 4 to 6 year period at $83 million, and then kind of shoots back up at the tail end of those 10 years at $282 million.
Are you waiting till the end?
I think we can take questions
I
now.
just wanted to
Yep.
frame the use of the term a balloon. I hear balloon, I think balloon payment, and I don't think we owe anyone anything. So.
Right, we don't owe anyone anything, just in terms of, we'll talk in a few slides about how much we're spending now and how much, so if you compare what we're spending now
Yeah.
to that 184, that's why I'm saying,
Okay, thank you.
I'm using that term. All right, so we're moving now to the potential discretionary projects that are out there, and I think each of these, has been part of some level of conversation, between the administration and the board and other elected officials. This kind of puts all those numbers on one page. To purchase the court building in Novi, which we currently lease, would be $8 million. To build a new court building in Clarkston would be $27 million. And there was a separate assessment on that, which we've also shared, that shows a few options, but unfortunately, all of them, at this point at least, have a price tag of about that magnitude. A new 911 dispatch center and emergency operations center is $69 million. A new training center and storage facility for the sheriff's office is $68 million. And then the building that the Water Resource Commissioner is interested in for central administration and operations is also up over $60 million. And it's the same, technical caveat on that direct cost piece. Those are costs that have to be spread across each of those projects. So each of those individual projects is really about a third higher than the number in the bar on this chart.
Commissioner Powell has a question.
So, on that last slide, build new Clarkston Court building, wasn't it an issue with the land, I guess we already own out there that is not buildable? Is that including that lost, and that's why this is high, or are we looking at a whole separate project?
We can share with you this separate presentation on Clarkston. They gave us, after they evaluated the space they have now and the space they need in the years ahead, they gave us 4 options.
Okay.
So it is build on the land that we own, which you're right, it's 27 million. It's buy a new piece of land and build on it, which is still around 27 million. It's lease a space and, rehab that space to meet our needs, which is about $12 million. So they gave us a range of options. It doesn't necessarily include, selling that property, which unfortunately is worth less than we paid for it at this point.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. I was just wondering about that.
Commissioner Cavell, you have a question?
Yeah, just for clarification, and forgive me if you covered this, but discretionary projects then, this is, if I understand right, kind of everyone's ask, and you're not putting a value judgment on them at this point, other than you're not saying the Clarkston Courthouse should be built or it should not be built. You're saying the request is building one, the quote is $27 million.
That's exactly right.
Thank you.
So those projects total $313 million. This slide here compares then just those 2 big numbers, so the 549 for the things that we kind of have to do in terms of our current buildings, and the 313 for new buildings. I think as we reviewed this report, the 313 wasn't necessarily a big surprise. We knew that there was interest in all those new buildings, and that the costs had likely gone up over the last few years as we've seen, cost escalation, particularly in the construction industry. I think the 549 was kind of the eye opener for us, in terms of the size of the need that's there for our current buildings.
Commissioner Moss has a question.
Yeah. I'm looking at the budget that we just approved, the capital improvement program, which would be page 46 of the Cliff's Notes. And, I understand that it says at the bottom that this is subject to change based on the ongoing capital improvement program study that was authorized by miscellaneous. I assume that's what this is. So the amount, I have to keep on the mic here, the amount in total that we were looking at when we approved the budget was $260 million. Now we're looking at, this is 862, or if you're only talking about the discretion or the non-discretionary 549, this is a serious escalation in terms of the cost over what it was when we were approving the budget.
Correct. I don't know if Ed wants to speak to that in any more detail.
Right, so what was included in Executive Coulter's recommended budget, like you mentioned, is the fiscal year 2023 CIP and the 5 to 10 years following that, right? And what's included in that plan are projects that we've identified that we anticipate having funding for, right? This study here has allowed us to recognize our greater need, and the plan would be to potentially bond for these funds correct me if I'm wrong.
Right, that's the next step. So I
That's
think
the
what
next
was in the
step.
budget was kind of what we knew, before we got this assessment. This assessment gives us a wider view and unfortunately, a much larger number.
Yeah, definitely wider.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
So the next slide,
One
kind of
direction or the
speaks
other.
to the question of how we got here. I mean, I think there's a couple things. I think, first of all, any large organization, particularly a large governmental organization, is always going to have a certain level of backlog in terms of maintenance. But as we look back historically, Plant Moran is telling us right now that if we started with a county campus in well-maintained condition, we should really be spending $15 million per year, which would go up over time with inflation, just to maintain that level. And as we look back over the past 20 years, the county, for a number of reasons, unfortunately, has only been spending about $3 million per year. So, I think that's why we're seeing this balloon right now in terms of things that have been pushed off that we need to figure out how to tackle.
So that leads us to the last portion of our plan, which is, when you're faced with such an immense challenge, how are we going to tackle it? So there's a few things that we want to leave you with in terms of additional work in progress and then what we have been tasked to do by the county executive. So April's going to go over just the additional work that we think could factor into our recommendations.
And again, in keeping in the common theme of knowing the whole footprint of what we need to do before we start making decisions, we're rounding the circle here on a couple of things that are in play that are very close being wrapped up. As you know, we've been doing a needs assessment as well as it relates to space, making sure that the space that we're using is utilized at its best, using the potential for hybrid work models to allow us to condense some buildings, maybe take some offline. That is very close to the finish line. One of the things we're also taking a look at is what is called a master land use plan. Those of you in local communities probably hear a lot about that, but it's understanding what we own, our space, as it relates to land, buildings and things of that nature, and having a comprehensive plan for that. And then, of course, again, very close to the finality of the campus-wide environmental sustainability plan. Can we put some things in play there that can help offset some costs? And also making sure that we can integrate those things as we do make our changes, especially in infrastructure and any building. So all of that is all getting close to being wrapped up as well. That will kind of move us into our final plan.
Commissioner Powell, you have a question?
When you talk about the master land use plan, is that also to determine buildings that we may want to sell or they get redeveloped or for something else because we may not need it?
Yes, correct.
And then this is also kind of tying in with the municipalities because of maybe like their zoning and stuff to make sure what we're
Yes.
trying to do. Okay, great.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, and then the other question I had is bond. What do you mean, whenever y'all get a chance,
Yeah,
just
that-
bond.
that- absolutely,
Okay,
that's
'cause I
next
wanted to
coming
know
up
what that was
next.
about. Okay,
You
thank
guys,
you.
you commissioners are just leading us right from one slide to
Yes.
the other slide.
We pay attention
over
over
here.
here.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're on the same
Commissioner
wavelength.
Kowal's here.
So we wanted, once we had the comprehensive study, because we have been referencing it so much, we really wanted to share it with you so that you had a scope of what we are grappling with. What we are now doing next is working with Plant Moran in terms of trying to refine, what would you see as priorities. We're also, going over all of our financial options, and Kyle will speak to those for a bit. But our goal is to come back to the board in the first quarter of next year with a recommended plan in terms of how we would step-by-step address this challenge. So that's our timeline to try to get back to you by the first quarter of next year. You want to talk a little bit
Yeah,
about
so I mean, on the
financing
financial
options?
side, obviously first we have to determine what are the priorities. And then, the next step beyond that is determining, what's our capacity to bond. We want to make sure that, bonding is obviously not free money, and we're going to start to incur annual debt service, along with our goal that we achieved this year of getting the county budget into structural balance. We're going to make sure any increases in debt service, are fit within, growth or other space that we've got in the county budget. So just for a rule of thumb, at current interest rates, and obviously, interest rates have shifted and are continuing to shift, but at current interest rates, this is just a hypothetical number to give you a sense of magnitude. Issuing $100 million in bonds over a 20-year term would create annual debt service of $7 to $7.5 million per year. So that's obviously real money, that we would have to find in our ongoing budget. The first step we did take, which isn't going to be enough, but is at least a step in the right direction, is the budget that we just worked with you to adopt last month. Does phase up that annual amount, that's in the budget for our annual CIP from $3 million to $8 million over 5 years. We're going to have to revisit, how do we continue to boost that number, over time, but that's at least, a good first step that we've all taken together.
And I would just add to that, that this is why when you look at the 3-year balanced budget, we have taken so seriously our need to make the workforce efficiencies because, in the first year, our balance was balanced, right? And then in second and third year, we start to get to the point where we have a bit of a surplus, which we knew we needed to start to create the room for because we have to find a way to pay for at least, if you were going to bond for $100 million, $7 million in our budget. So we'd have to add that to your general fund budget.
Right. Commissioner Long.
Yeah, I just forgot, when did we start this project here with Plant Moran?
About a year ago.
Probably rounding out a year right now.
Okay. Thank you. I kind of forgot.
And Commissioner Powell, followed by Commissioner McGilvray.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm still confused. I actually don't even, you know what, never mind. I'm gonna just call Kyle myself so you can explain this bond thing, because I don't even understand it.
We can
So
talk.
I don't, from a financial standpoint, I know it may take more, so that's fine, never mind.
That's fair.
I'll call you.
Commissioner McGilvray.
Does this project that Plant Moran that they have done, does that envision any future needs? An example, the sheriff's has been talking for the last few years about a new training center and garage and all that kind of stuff. Are we considering any of that at all?
That's in that.
It's in there.
That was included in the
In
non-discretionary.
non-discretionary, we included all of the items that people have raised as, discretionary.
It's in the discretionary.
And I would add, on behalf of the Water Resource Commissioner, their situation is a little bit different because while there would be general fund needed to finance this building that they need, and if anyone's ever seen the video of what they have to do to get their vehicles in and out every day, people have needs. We understand that. This isn't a wish list. This is a list of what people feel are fundamentally their needs for the future. Their situation is a little bit different because they can finance some of what they would be paying off in that building, but they need a bit of a general fund investment to make it happen.
Okay.
Right.
They've asked us to make sure that that we clarify that with you.
Commissioner Kowal.
That was fast, thank you. Well, thank you very much for presenting this. So $100 million is going to cost us around $7 million a year to $8 million a year for 20 years, right?
Right.
We have $849 million worth of CIP needs. So we'll just keep getting behind her as far as I'm concerned. But, I guess, is there any way to look at it? Is there any way that we can eventually undertake a little bit of a bigger, a debt? I think we're way underneath our debt
This is
load.
where
I
you get
forget where it
really
is.
into the fiscal weeds, right?
Yeah.
Because you would bond for something later, wrap all that financing together, maybe pay more in the early years, less in the outer years. Like, that's what we've tasked Kyle with figuring out. Like,
Okay.
It wouldn't just be bond for 100, wait 20 years, bond for another 100. At some
Okay.
point, you got to figure out you
the
know.
rest of it?
That was just more of an
Yes.
example.
Yeah,
We just wanted to
yeah.
show you the value of
Yeah.
$100,000 or $100
Oh, okay.
million. Yep.
Okay,
Good question.
thank you.
Commissioner Moss?
And when we say bond, we really should say borrow. Like, we're basically
Oh,
taking a
thank you.
loan out.
Thank you.
And we take the loan out, the markets give us the money, and we pay it back at $7 million.
We're taking out a home equity loan to fix our road.
Thank you. You just changed
I understand that.
Like Mr. Bill becomes a law, this like Mr. Bond becomes it. Not James Bond. Okay, so one thing you know you're doing is that you have interest rates are not going down. In fact, they're going up, and they're probably going to keep going up at least for the foreseeable future. Now, in past years, we would see the interest rates coming down, and we would refinance essentially to use. Refinance our county loans at a more advantageous rate, because instead of them being whatever the heck they were in 1980, where they're like 90% or something, they would be going far down. So, and that may happen again. And so the bottom line is that you are, I hope, looking at the fact that the cost of money is going up. And whatever the amount is you're looking at it at the snapshot today is probably going to be worse a year from now. So I don't know how the answer for that, but that is, I believe, a fact. I could be wrong, but don't think I am.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I mean, I think it's between interest rates, which thankfully haven't gone up as much for, a county with a AAA bond rating as I think it has for others. That's a factor. And the higher construction costs are a factor, although those have started to come down a little bit, but still, I think, well above where they were, 3 years ago. So we're acutely aware of all these variables that are going to have to be accounted for to be as strategic as possible.
Yeah, Bloomberg today was talking about inflation is just back up. It's what it is.
We're all watching the next report tomorrow morning.
Yes, aren't we all?
Yeah, thank you. Oakland County is a world-class county, and Southfield, to me, public schools is a world-class school district, and yet we still find ourselves with deferred maintenance. I just don't quite get it. 800 and some odd million, 500 of it is non-discretionary. And I've just started to learn what you just said there about 15%. Any good homeowner would spend about 15% of the value of their home on upkeep and maintenance on an annual basis. I know most of us are not doing that. So we're just a country of deferred maintenance all over the place. So my question is, if you've got that 800 million, and we'll just play with the 549 for now, because I'm not really sure about the 313
Sure.
in that regard. So so I guess what I'm trying to say is, how do you change the tires on the plane in the air? Because you're 549 million, still trying to figure that out, plus each year that 15%. Have you put to any thoughts to how we manage that?
I mean, I think it's going to have to be a combination of things. I mean, I think as Hillary, stated, we wanted to get you this assessment as soon as we had it. I don't think we're all the way or even halfway there in terms of baking a plan, but it's going to have to be a combination of a level of borrowing, of a level of increasing what our annual spend is each year. And it's going to take time, right? It's going to take at least these 10 years, if not longer, and we're going to have to figure out what are the true priorities in terms of the county's operational needs, and what are the top priorities in terms of things you should fix now because they're going to get, more expensive more quickly than other things.
Maybe we could create an Oakland County token and put it on the crypto market, and everyone in Oakland County could purchase their own token, and we'll be all right. Thank you, Ms. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Charles. I have a couple of questions. The first one's for Mr. Joss. What's the status of the steam plant and the HVAC and all of that? What are you thinking?
Well, I'm hesitating to, it's part of the AECom plan, which we've been Aaron has received the next version of that, which is being reviewed right now. So I don't want to speak too much to that because, for one, I'm not 100% sure. I do know that that's part of that evaluation, and there are numbers in this CIP study that account for that. If we do decide to, look at alternative energy sources. So there's a couple different options that were included in this plan, and the direction for moving forward on that will come from the AECOM study.
But it is the end of life. So we did project what it would cost to decommission the steam plant.
Okay.
And Kyle recently visited the steam plant, so he's had a firsthand view
I
of
don't
how old and outdated it is.
I don't recommend it.
And not only is it old, I've been told, and you will say this, that they can't even find people who are trained to maintain it.
Right.
Because it's so old. So, plus it's incredibly inefficient over the longer term.
maybe Henry Ford
Okay,
will
so,
pay us for it.
but that's the right answer, that you're looking at it and you'll have the response. What is our bonding capacity? I was told a year or two ago that we were only borrowing about 8% of our potential capacity, so.
Right. So there's a couple answers here. So like the technical answer is that we can have outstanding debt up to 10% of our total taxable value in the county, and we're only at 0.7 or 0.8. I always caution people, that's not really a useful way of looking at it, because that same 10% applies to a city or a school district that has a much higher millage rate than we do. So you really want to look at this in the context of as a percentage of your budget. And in that case, we still have, fairly low outstanding debt and high debt capacity. And I don't have those numbers right in my head, but the key thing that we're keeping an eye on is making, this is a key element of the scorecard that the two rating agencies use as they're evaluating our financial position and giving us our credit rating. And we want to make sure that we're borrowing at a pace that it does not push us down on that scorecard and potentially threaten the AAA. So that's answer 2. And answer 3 is kind of the answer we gave already, that at the end of the day, what the true limitation is you have to pay the debt service, and how do we fit that into our budget? So,
Because, and I would add to that, even though we have had a growing fund balance, it's not like there aren't challenges or items on the horizon that are going to, are going to impact that fund balance. Raffaele, for example, right? Even though we've set that aside, we know at some point this year, you all are going to have to appropriate $38 million. And there's other things out there on the horizon that could impact the fund balance. So you have to kind of factor in both things.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Oh, yeah, okay. We're going to come back to me, though, but yeah.
Oh, no, please, I defer. I would never try
go
to
ahead,
upstage the
Commissioner
chair.
Moss.
I always like the last word, but, all right.
I'm going to get the
Yeah, that's
list.
what Alice says.
Yeah, don't give me that. Debt service. Yeah, I always found when you referred to it as the VIG, it worked out better. People like that, Elmore Leonard novels. Here's the thing. Our revenue, or most of our revenue, of course, comes from the property tax. Everything I'm seeing is that we are in a recession. The Christmas season is looking more and more dismal. The chip market is falling apart. And property values are starting to soften. Now, I would more rely on our realtor there, would probably know firsthand. Are we looking, by the county, looking at a possible challenge to our revenue from property values and equalization?
So, we are keeping a close eye on all those variables, and Michael and his team, keep us updated. I think, as we talked about during the budget process, we tried to make sure that, the assumptions we were using on property tax revenues in the budget were on the cautious side.
Okay.
We continue to see things evolve, obviously. There was actually a good article in Bloomberg on the national housing market yesterday that looked at all the variables, and I think they're seeing that prices are going to flatten out with mortgage rates going up. However, there's still very limited supply of houses as well. So that's going to that imbalance between demand and supply will help prop up housing prices. And, you know, in Michigan, as much as Proposal A has been a frustration on the upside, it does provide a buffer on the downside that, you know, for most houses, there's a gap between assessed value and taxable value, so that even if assessed values, you know, do fall, there's some buffer there. So from our perspective, you know, we're being very diligent and monitoring all those variables. We don't see an immediate threat, you know, to our property tax revenue estimates.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any thoughts yet on closing any buildings, or are we still, everything's just kind of up there?
Everything is still kind of up there, but we're close. So one of the things that was mentioned in the work in progress was the space needs assessment, which we're also working on with Plant Moran, and they're very close to wrapping that up. So that space needs assessment will help us determine that.
Okay. I will just say that as an engineer by training and in my head, I love this, that we actually looked at the whole county and what our needs really are. We don't like the answer we got, but at least we know. And then you can start to put together a plan that says, when we start to spend money, we're spending it right. We're spending it on the needs that we have first. We're not just, you know, based on somebody's personality or who yells at us the most when they come to this table, but the fact that there's overall going to be a strategy for how we're going to operate this county complex going forward. I think there's so much benefit to really thinking comprehensively and overall about all of this, not only from an economic standpoint, but from an environmental standpoint, because we will operate this county more efficiently in an energy way once this is all done also. And hopefully we can reduce some of our overall costs long-term by getting more efficient and closing some buildings and so on. So I think what we've done here, I know there was, when we talked about doing these big studies, the sustainability study and the building utilization study, there was some pushback that, you know, do we really need to spend $1 million to do that? But I think in the long run, that's going to be a drop in the bucket when measured against the benefit we're going to get long-term from having done it. So thank you for doing such a comprehensive plan or review, and you know, I appreciate what's been done so far, and I look forward to seeing the sustainability report and the building utilization report and all of that. So this is good stuff, I think. Anybody else have any questions or comments you want to make on this? If not, then do we do anything? Receive and file?
Motion received.
Commissioner Moss moves, Commissioner Powell supports. All in favor of receiving and filing, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Done. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
This is right up my alley. No, thanks.
Sure. Nobody likes nutter butters?
No, it'll give me heartburn, and I don't need heartburn right now. I get enough heartburn running this meeting. All right. Charlie's passing out food. Next up,
I just want,
all right. Next on the agenda, we have,
What is it? Oh, no, thank you.
okay, next on the agenda, we have item number 9A, assessing real and personal property assessment services with the city of Novi for 22 and 23. And welcome.
Good morning.
I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Powell. Hi.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, thank you. Just to give you a little bit of introduction, as you may have known, when I came to Oakland County, I came from City of Novi. City of Novi was in the midst of looking for a full-time city assessor to take over the responsibilities of their community. That was back in June. At that time and until now, they haven't found somebody to take over the position. So they've approached us to take on some of the responsibility. And as you can see in the resolution, for much of the responsibility, it's to do some of the heavy lifting, commercial industrial valuation, and oversee the rest of the responsibilities. They still have the rest of their staff, which is a pretty sizable staff. They just want us to do primarily commercial industrial and oversee the rest of the residential tribunal. They'll maintain the primary responsibilities of their own border review and the day-to-day activities, but we'll make sure they are over doing those responsibilities correctly. But we'll take them, we've entered into an engagement agreement that you have before you that will take them through the assessment process, take them through March border review process, and take them through June, which takes them actually through to the next database that'll get them to starting the next assessment role, which we're hoping will give them time to actually go out and decide whether they're either going to find a new assessor or maybe have somebody on staff to be able to fulfill that responsibility. So this is just a limited service agreement to get them to hopefully June of 2023.
And we should just mention the dollar amount.
Yeah, we, because of the time period that I came here, some of the assessment role responsibility was done. So the compensation would be $75,000, and that's because they have somebody doing their personal property reason consulting, which was their personal property auditor. And like I said, they have a full-time staff there for the rest of the responsibilities.
And there's a budget amendment for this, is that correct?
There is a budget amendment just to appropriate the $75,000 in contract revenue that would fully cover our costs.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Commissioner Long.
So is this thank you, Chairwoman. Is this a savings for Novi then, or about the same?
It is a savings because,
Okay.
like I said, a lot of the work had already been done before I came here.
So they can extend this as any other municipality to do all the assessing here if they want to go that route, is that correct?
Well, their positions are union there, so I don't know how they could, I don't know what the process
So it
to
might be a
extend
little
it.
bit us doing like you're doing now,
If-
and then them doing, or?
If they were to extend it, it is in this contract, they'd have to renegotiate it because this
Okay.
is not like a swap, my position for this duration. It would have been a much greater tuition for us to do the whole assessor, just my role. The
Okay.
75,000 wouldn't have been just for
So if they come
my
back
position.
and after 23 contracts done, it might just be for this piece of it. Are you saying that, or?
Well, I think the easiest way to say it is this is sort of a one-time stopgap
Right.
solution, and
Okay.
anything that would extend past that would have to be a new conversation.
Okay,
Yep.
Right.
thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, if there's nobody else, then let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 1 nay.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have item 9B, designating Michael Lohmeyer as Oakland County Equalization Director.
I will kick this one off, and then let Michael answer any questions.
Let
but
me get
since
a motion from
Oh.
Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner Powell. Okay.
Sure.
Now the floor is yours.
So, as some commissioners who were here last term may recall, there were some state statutory changes made several years ago that requires each county to have a designated assessor. There's some complexities around this, but basically this is making sure that every local unit of government in the state has a backup person who's responsible for the assessing in that local unit, should the local unit, for whatever reason, not be able to perform those assessing services themselves. I don't think this has been an issue in Oakland County. I think it's a function of probably smaller communities and other areas of the state. So that there is a process to determine and confirm who that designated assessor is. It requires a majority of the local units in the county to approve the individual as the designated assessor, and then requires you, through this resolution to confirm that. So Michael and his team have started that process as he's moved into the role here with the county, and this resolution would kind of button that up, to make that official designation for Michael moving forward.
Anybody have any
Did I miss anything
questions?
there?
No, that was pretty clear. I mean, you might recall back in about 2018, we had a lot of meetings, and some of them were at City of Novi. The past history was the STC would step in when there was a problem with a community not having an assessor and then charge the community. A lot of communities didn't like that, so they were allowed to go out and get a designated assessor, and Oakland County decided that if they had a majority, that they would become the designated assessor and kind of take care of their own people in their own backyard. So they created this agreement, and we approached the State Tax Commission and said, do you want us to do an amendment and just change the name and dates, or would you like just a brand-new agreement? And they said, well, you're the first to do this since this started. So we think just changing the name and dates would be the cleanest way to do it. So that's the option we went with. So this is the identical contract that you last signed with my predecessor. The only thing we've changed is the date. We've kept the duration the same, and then my name has changed. Nothing else has changed.
And we should note, this is an unpaid assignment, so this will be additional responsibility without any additional compensation for Michael.
Commissioner Charles?
It's Lohmeyer.
Yes, ma'am.
Nice to meet you and potentially welcome.
Thank you.
So how public-facing is your office? Are people able to ask you questions about, if they have questions about property lines and things like that, are you the person they come to for that, or is it more about the value of their property type of thing?
We're 110% open door policy. You can call me direct, you can call any of the staff direct. But yeah, you can call our office about values, you can call our office about, we don't do surveys, but you can certainly get parcel maps, parcel record information that shows where the parcel lines are. Whenever there's a parcel dispute, we usually suggest you get actually a survey done, because our maps are more for tax purposes.
Gotcha.
But I'm always 110% open door policy. People can call me direct, they can call me any time of the day if they'd like.
Great to know. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Moss.
Anybody else?
Do you do cable shows?
Do I do?
We'll talk.
I do anything. Did a lot of videos at City of Novi that are still on YouTube. So
Excellent.
Commissioner Charles again.
Yeah, I do apologize. You said it so quickly that it kind of went by me really briefly, but certainly I just want to make sure that we're not putting too much on a soul to be able to do all this stuff, and then we don't match it up with compensation. It just seems a little peculiar to me. You know how jobs love to give you promotions, but does it come with any kind of assistance in that regard? So that's not lost on me, and I just want to make sure that we treat our folks correctly when they're doing the work. So
Accountants have souls?
I've been told. I've been told.
they take care of me very well.
Okay.
I'm very well. I have a very strong passion for assessing, and I love working with the public, so I love doing this.
Thank you.
He'd
Thank
do
you.
it for free, but we do pay him. I'd also like to take the opportunity, if I could, Madam Chair, to thank Terry Schultz, who, during the position, during the period that the position was vacant, Terry, took on a number of designations in terms of official, things that happen with the state in terms of paperwork and so forth, and did take on some additional responsibilities. So I didn't want to let that go unnoted. Thank you, God.
Yes, thank you to all of you. And I know it's been tough balancing the changes in the department and all that, especially right on top of the assessing period of time, so. Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay.
That's nice.
All right. Next, we have the 2022 apportionment of local taxes. I need a motion. Commissioner Moss, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. All right. Mr. Lohmeyer, you want to tell us what we've got?
Yes, this is the 22 apportionment report, which is basically,
Sorry, go ahead.
which is, again, it'll tell you what all the tax rates are that we've collected through various certificates, statements, and reports from all of our taxing authorities, the local communities, villages, townships, and cities. It also shows you on each of the various different pages, those that have been reduced by the different Headley functions, except for, like it discusses on the very first page, Schoolcraft Community College, which is not further reduced. So that we give that to you every October to show you what the tax rates are for all those different authorities. So that for budgeting purposes, that'll be applied to the 2022 taxable values for all those different communities. That was signed for our assessment rolls that we provided to you back in April, which have only been adjusted for by our July board review and different STC orders, et cetera. So it's somewhat self-explanatory, but if anything needs to be explained further, I'm here, happy to help. And again, always available at our office for any questions that you may have.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Let's go ahead and prompt the vote. This is a big one. Tax rates for this year. I would like to make just a general comment to any public that's out there. We did not raise the tax rate in Oakland County this year. There's been sort of a rumor that we did. We did not raise the tax rate in Oakland County.
Municipalities kind of though. You know, like with their villages.
Right.
This is, if you haven't had a chance to review the report, the section that starts on page 2, I think is very helpful in terms of seeing what's the tax rate in each locality or for each authority for 2022, how does that compare to 2021, and why did it change? And, as you're aware, the only way it can go up is if there's a vote of the people or if there's a change in a debt service payment on a debt millage, so.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, motion carries. Next up, we have item D, extension with Peninsula Fiber Network for the next generation 911 EZNet from 2022 to 2032. Welcome, Mr. Tim. I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Cavell.
Good morning, Commissioners. So as you saw in the resolution as well as the summary, Peninsula Fiber Network was contracted, went through a competitive bid process that was statewide. We were one of the first entities in Oakland County to implement what's called the new EZNet, or the enhanced security 911 system. And since then, our contract has been used as the model for other RFPs that other counties in the state have done. PFN has won all of those bids and now supplies this 911 circuit infrastructure throughout the entire state, with the exception of Macomb County, who is currently negotiating their contract, and their contract is out for bid. And the way that the 911 circuits work is PFN basically built this infrastructure, and they do that with an understanding with the state that the surcharges on our telephones and now also on our cellular phones, those surcharges are established through a combination of state law as well as additional, we at the local level can also implement a small additional charge. Those charges on your phone bills that are for 911 service go to the state through the telcos, your AT&T, your Verizon, whoever you have phone service with. That money goes to the state from the telcos, and then the state reimburses PFN for the cost of this infrastructure. So that's basically being done, as I mentioned, in every county at the moment except for Macomb. And it looks like Macomb will also engage with this network. So the basic premise of this contract is we, Oakland County, and every county, every entity that manages a 911 service has to provide a contract that then PFN takes to the state that shows that they are actually providing the service. That's part of the process they go through to get reimbursed from these 911 funds. So that's a state requirement. It is not a state requirement that we have a 10-year contract, but it does simplify the reimbursement process. And the easier we make that for the state, and that's the intent of asking for a 10-year. This infrastructure is not something, it's on the order of hundreds of millions of dollars. If you can imagine installing new fiber cable underground for higher reliability, multiple paths. Again, there are no networks that we manage more critical than our 911 network. So it is highly redundant. PFN has done a great job doing the implementation and the servicing. And then they partner with, we have a separate contract with Motorola, and Motorola provides the actual dispatch function in our 21 PSAPs, the public safety answering points throughout the county that take the 911 calls. So PFN routes the calls into these dispatch centers depending on where they're coming from, and then the dispatch centers use software provided by Motorola that interfaces with our CLEMIS systems to get the public safety, police, fire, EMS, et cetera, dispatched out to the emergencies. So it is a very complex system, again, multiple levels of redundancy, and PFN has been an outstanding vendor partner in this engagement. So we wanted to bring this forward as a 10-year contract extension, to move forward with that with PFN. And we do at the county, it is in the IT budget. It costs us about $80,000 a year to manage this contract, and that's included in our budget. So if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Tim on this? Seeing no one, let's go ahead and vote.
Such a good presentation when you have questions.
Charles?
Yolanda?
Charles?
She did it.
I think I want it to
Oh,
be
there
on
you
the
go.
regular, although I did vote yes. Not because I have concerns, but I just have a couple things I want to just make sure I check with Mike on offline.
Oh,
But I voted. It's there. It's a yes.
she just, you don't want it on the consent agenda
Yeah.
before, she's saying.
I'm gonna make a note to put it on the.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
wants it on
put it on the regular agenda. Okay,
so that's-
sure.
I just hate monopolies.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Tim.
you.
What do we have? How many?
Oh, Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay. Thank you. All right, next up is acceptance of 2 support canine dogs, Woody and Colt. You didn't bring them.
I know, that's what I said.
They're on site, they're already at work.
Oh, they're already at work already.
What kind of dogs are
Motion by Commissioner McGilvery, supported by Commissioner Moss.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
So, thank you. First of all, I want to thank the board staff for getting this on your agenda today. This actually went to Public Health and Safety yesterday, and the budget amendment was inadvertently left out, so that's why we're before you today. But yes, so we received 2 new therapy canines. One is assigned to the school resource officer in Brandon Township, and the other is assigned to a crash investigator that does death notifications and crash investigations. So there are 2 more to our team, and it's a widely popular program.
Questions? Commissioner Moss?
What kind of dogs are they?
They are the King Charles Cavalier Spaniels. Same,
guy.
yeah, all the same breed.
Yeah. Officer that was here with, I mean, what are we calling the little, the one that was, the first one that was here with us about a couple months ago, Officer?
Was that Captain Hell with Scarlet, or Callie?
Callie.
Yes.
Yeah, so it looks just like,
Yes. Actually, Woody, the one that's assigned to, so it's Woody and Colt, and Woody's assigned to Brandon School District, and he has a little more caramel color on his face, so he's a little bit different than the others, but.
is there, Madam Chair, is there a retirement process for the dogs when they get to a certain age? Is there a nice cushy environment that they go to spend their later days?
Well, with this is still a pilot or a brand new program for us, but we plan to do it just like our regular canine program, where when they get to a certain age or they're aged out of what they're doing, then we sell it back to the handler for $1, and then they retire at home with the family that they've been living with for their entire life. So
Nice. Thank you.
Okay, anybody have any more comments? Let's prompt the vote, please.
She said Children's Village, Joe. Just kidding.
Be careful.
I know.
Motion carries. Now we own a couple of dogs. All right. Next up, item 10, Public Health and Safety Committee recommendations. Item 10A, from the State of Michigan for the FY 2023 Michigan Indigent Defense Commission grant. I need a motion. Commissioner Moss, supported by Commissioner Powell. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Pete Mena. I'm the Chief Attorney of our Indigent Defense Services Office. I'm very happy to report that the State of Michigan yesterday at the MIDC meeting did approve our grant submission. So it has been officially approved by the state. You'll remember I was here in the spring with the grant application, and we were making 2 very significant changes to our indigent defense system this year. One is the creation of an in-house public defender's office. So those employees are contained in our grant submission. And then the second is significant fee increases for our independent contract attorneys that we currently use. And so our total grant is, our total budget is approximately $16 million. The county puts in about $2 million from the general fund. That's statutory requirement. And then the rest, remainder of $14 million is the grant funding that we accept from the state.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Commissioner Charles.
So you don't foresee any funding gaps or anything such as that, since it is primarily that 16 or so million, I think you mentioned, from the state, is pretty guaranteed?
Yeah, the money that we're getting, I mean, we have to apply every year. But what we do is we tell the state, this is the money that we need to fund indigent defense. The state is then required to fund our request as long as the money is going to be used for indigent defense. We can have some back and forth with the state, certainly, about, well, do you really need this much money? We do have that back and forth during the process. But once they fund an indigent, an actual public defender's office, it's very hard for the state to then go back and say, well, no, you needed those public defenders then, but you don't need them anymore. So I don't see a funding gap in the future in that regard.
Good to know. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Seeing none, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, I have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thanks very
Thank you.
much. Good luck.
Thank you.
All All right, next up is item 10B from the U.S. Department of Justice for the FY 2022 Comprehensive Opioid Stimulant and Substance Abuse Site-Based Program. I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Kowal. Welcome back.
Thank you. So this is new funding that we've gotten in a little bit over 1.4 million for a 3-year program. It's going to enhance and expand our crisis intervention team training and create a countywide crisis response unit. So what we're planning to do is create 1 sergeant, 2 deputy 2s, and then also cover overtime and travel costs with this funding.
Okay. Anybody have any comments or questions? Commissioner Cavell?
Just wanted to say, I remember talking with Lieutenant Workman and Captain Hill about this a while ago, and we were looking at possibly using ARPA for this. So this is fantastic that you're able to get this off the ground and make this work with other money. And if there's ever a need for this, I think you should ask for it.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? Let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, thank you. Motion carries. And next up is item 10C from the U.S. Department of Justice for the FY 2022 Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services Technology and Equipment Program. Motion, Commissioner Moss, supported by Commissioner McGilvery.
Okay, so this is also new funding in the amount of $1 million for the body-worn camera program. It's going to cover positions, equipment, and some additional IT costs from the initial pilot program. We'll have 3 positions in the sheriff's office. That 1 will be dedicated to the hardware maintenance and installation and troubleshooting, and then 2 additional positions for freedom of information requests, and then 1 position in the prosecuting attorney's office.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments? I have a couple of questions just about the this is for the body-worn camera program, correct? So I'm not clear on where we're at in all of that. You know, do all of our patrol officers have them, or where do we currently have them? Do we have a long-term plan of when we're gonna, you know, what's the status really of the body-worn camera program overall, and how does this fit in?
We just started deploying them. So far, we have them in Pontiac and Addison Township. The next place is going to be within our corrections, the jail and the courthouse. That will allow Central Garage some time to catch up on the installation they have to do in the cars, and then we'll continue with the rest of our substations. So it's in process right now.
So how long do you think it'll take to completely outfit the sheriff's department with the body-worn cameras?
I'd have to check the schedule, but it's probably a couple of months. It takes a couple of days at each sub for the training, the installation. So, and we've got at least 10 more substations to do. So even if we figure 2 subs a week, maybe, so another couple of months.
A few weeks as opposed to, I'm glad I'm not hearing a couple of years.
No,
okay?
no.
I'm
They're
glad
out there
it's-
now, just not
It's a
everywhere.
shortened timeframe. Okay. That was really my question, trying to understand that whole, because I know the public really, you know, is looking for that, as well as all of us, and want to make sure that we're stepping out and getting that done, so. Commissioner Long.
I forget, so this is just for the Oakland County deputies, right? So
Yes.
the local police can do what they want, I mean, each individual municipality can
Yes.
do what they want with the cameras.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Charles.
Yes, Madam Chair, I hope it's germane. Does the OCSO also service SMART, like when they run into problems, maybe security problems, someone on the bus doing something crazy, they call 911. Is that an Oakland County Sheriff thing? Is that the local municipality?
If it's in our area, we'll respond.
Okay, thank you.
It sounds like you had a particular incident.
You want some rowdy bus there?
No, just like jurisdiction.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, anybody else have any Commissioner Powell.
Just kudos, I just want to thank the Sheriff Department for sticking to the agenda of their schedule of deploying to the city of Pontiac as one of their first or second locations, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Our citizens are going to be happy when we officially announce, so thank you.
Okay, if nobody else has any questions or comments, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
What I don't get is how come we get so many emails about stuff going on in Pontiac, but I don't see
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have, we're moving along. Item 11A, Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee recommendations for the Healthy Communities Park and Outdoor Recreation Investment Plan, ARPA. Motion from Commissioner Moss, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. Good morning, Mr. Ward. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Ward.
Thank you for taking this item up, and we appreciate being the last item on a very busy agenda, so hopefully you're worn down and throwing up your white flag here. But in all seriousness, this plan that's before you, the resolution that's before, did you get a motion already?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. It is the result of a tremendous amount of work. If you recall back in March, this commission approved a resolution calling on our Parks Commission to put together up to $15 million in investments, in proposals to expend American Rescue Plan dollars, really recognizing the important role that our parks and outdoor recreation facilities played in supporting the public throughout the pandemic. And we continue to see that attendance spike just continue to grow and grow, and interest in use of our facilities is continuing to be on an upward momentum. So this proposal before you, and we're calling it the Healthy Communities Park and Outdoor Recreation Investment Plan, we think it's a worthy proposal for your consideration. Hopefully not only something you can support, but want to embrace and celebrate, because we think this is really a truly understanding this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity these funds provide. We think this is going to really make a major impact in the area of parks and recreation, and really focused in those areas where we can stretch those dollars as far as possible, and where the communities really need the help the most. So at the heart of the proposal is basically plans to rejuvenate, revitalize existing parks, both municipal parks that have suffered due to underinvestment or outdated facilities and amenities. We have our own county parks as well that are included in here that needed a little bit of new investment as well. All of this is very much focused on improving physical and mental health outcomes and getting people socially connected. We utilize the ARPA guidelines in determining where we put our focus and what investments we're recommending. There's some pretty clear guidance there in terms of determining disproportionately impacted communities, where you can use ARPA dollars for capital improvements related to parks and recreation. So with that in mind, we narrowed our focus to 5 communities: Hazel Park, Oak Park, Pontiac, Royal Oak Township, and Southfield. And 4 county parks that met the definitions under the ARPA guidelines, and that's Catalpa Oaks, Lion Oaks, Red Oaks, and Waterford Oaks. There's something I think we're pretty proud of, and we've worked out some great win-win agreements that will be a game changer for Oakland County Parks and Recreation, and realign our relationship and our ability to serve the urban core population centers of the county. And this is a tremendous and exciting opportunity for us. In doing so, we have, and we just came from the Economic Development Committee, where they considered the letters of intent that we worked with local communities. But the basic outline of that is that we are going to take some wonderful park locations where really there is that great need for revitalizing, rejuvenating the park, And then we're going to take your one-time investment and we're going to sustain it and we're going to build on it by transferring the operations of those parks to become Oakland County Parks. And that includes Hawthorne Park in the city of Pontiac, right around the corner here. Shepherd Park, a portion of Shepherd Park in the city of Oak Park. Beechwoods Park, a portion of that park in the city of Southfield. And those will be wonderful new additions to Oakland County Parks and Recreation's list of park facilities that are available, and not only will be available to the people in those communities, but also expand the access to all Oakland County residents. We also have worked out an agreement with the city of Madison Heights to acquire through a lease a 7-acre park parcel, Ambassador Park, which is adjacent to Red Oaks County Park. This will, while it's not a large piece of property, that entire park is almost all located over a county drain, which creates kind of a looming question mark all the time in terms of what we can invest in there, what we can sustain, because at any point in time that drain may need to be repaired, and the investments we're making, they may be, totally deteriorated and have to be rebuilt again. This area here is not located over the drain, and that really opens up possibilities for us to do a lot more on that property, and also creates a new direct connection point off of 11 Mile Road, is that right? Gary?
12 Mile.
12 Mile, thank you, Gary. Yeah.
Gary's
Yeah.
right.
And it's Gary's backyard, so he can speak to this better than I can, but it really is a nice way to connect that park, provide a new access point. We plan on putting in pickleball courts that there's certainly demonstrated desire and need for those in the community, and a green restroom. Certainly have learned in this time on this job in the last 10, 11 months how important restrooms are to people in our parks, in the lack of restroom facilities, how much that deteriorates your enjoyment of a park experience. And then finally, we want to take advantage of an opportunity to stretch these dollars even farther, share space with the city of Hazel Park, who has successfully received a $500,000 federal funding grant to expand their recreation space. They currently operate both a community center and a senior center jointly, and that senior center is also the joint senior center right now for the city of Ferndale as well. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us to play an additional role there and just kind of build off of what's going on there, stretch those dollars, share some space. We used to have a South Oakland office. Having our staff physically located in these communities really helps us be able to serve them better, be more accessible. So we want to build out some joint recreation programming space and then have some restored South Oakland office space for our staff to be there in the community. And then we have, as I listed off, 4 county parks where we have put together a list of extensive park improvement projects very much focused on health and wellness and social connectivity, pickleball courts, basketball courts, universally accessible playgrounds, trailways, splash pads, winter recreation. I can go into them in depth if you are interested into each park, but it's sort of just an overall broad overview of what we have planned there. And then finally, another component are some direct capital improvement grants that are focused on those 5 communities I mentioned, and keeping in mind the value of these leases, that there's a little bit of difference in terms of the recommended grant amount, where Oak Park, Southfield, and Pontiac are offering us this opportunity for a long-term lease or intergovernmental agreement to operate the park. And we have a $500,000 recommended for them, $400,000 for Hazel Park, in light of the recreation facility project we're working on together, and then $300,000 for Royal Oak Township. We've been working very closely with these communities to identify how these dollars would be used, and so we're going to finalize all that, and then it'll come back to you in the form of grant agreements for this board to approve. So you'll be seeing that again. The intergovernmental agreements that will finalize these partnerships that I mentioned will also be coming back here as we roll up our sleeves and do the hard work of working through the details of those intergovernmental agreements. And then finally, we are in the process of updating our master plan for each of our parks in our total countywide park system. And that's done every 5 years, and our commission is set to approve that in January, and that comes back here as well for your approval. So unfortunately, you're going to be seeing more of us no matter what here. And then I guess just to wrap up, our plan here is for Oakland County Parks Commission to administer this program. We are fortunate to have 3 members of this committee on the Parks Commission, represent the county executive, the Water Resources Commissioner, and the citizen appointees appointed by the board there that we think will provide a meaningful oversight role for you. We're happy to provide whatever reporting and compliance that the board would like, and keep you in the loop and keep you up to date on our progress. I will say this, that we've put together an ambitious list of plans, and it's a complex proposal. So there's some moving parts there, and our capacity and ability to complete all of the projects that are listed there are going to be dependent on many different factors, including construction costs, which continue to go up, the final terms of intergovernmental agreements, those master plans I mentioned. We're going to go after every external additional funding source we can possibly get our hands on. The state approved ARPA funding for parks, and they're going to be putting that grant program online in the next
2 weeks is what
2 weeks.
we just heard.
So having a clear plan moving forward with board's endorsement will really give us the ability to make some decisions on what we were going to apply for there, and allow us to move forward. And we'll look at nonprofits and corporate sponsorships and anywhere else we can bring more money to the table so that we can, again, stretch these dollars as far as possible, get as many of these projects done as we can. There's no general fund, general purpose. I see Commissioner Colwell, so I always like to mention this when I see you. No general fund, general purpose commitment that's the Colwell amendment to every ARPA resolution.
That's right, you're right.
Yeah, and, but, there will be costs that the Oakland County Parks and Recreation Commission will be taking on. We are bringing commitment to expend not less than $5.2 million towards the capital investments that will be made here. And then as we take on these new parks, we'll have some additional operating costs. Our increased millage provides us flexibility and ability to do these park expansions, and we very much believe that this is a wonderful opportunity for Oakland County Parks to do a much better job of being very consistently present in serving these urban core population centers of our county. Just want to say thank you very much for this opportunity, and happy to take any questions you have.
Okay, Commissioner Powell.
Can we pause for a minute?
Am I drooling or something?
Yes.
Oh, well, I'm really excited about this. So. Making my mouth water, apparently. Thank you.
That's all I wanted to do.
All right, well, that's it.
Oh, well, let me say this. I want to thank Chris, because this idea of this plan that he brought back to us is phenomenal. And yes, he did come and talk to the administration out at the city of Pontiac, and the vision just behind it is just great. And the assistance that's needed for those communities is well needed. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And your team, because I know it's a team behind you, so thank you.
Thanks for the base cleanup. Appreciate that.
No problem. Got your back, sir.
All on the same team here, We're a family. All right, Commissioner McGilvery?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to say thanks to Chris and his staff. He's the new kid on the block in parks, and he's put in phenomenal time, including meeting with all the local city managers, and he's just done a terrific job. And I'm really excited about this plan. It'll add so much, particularly to the south end of the county, but also Pontiac, because it'll really clean up that park. So I think this is a great plan. Thanks to Melissa and Jim Dunleavy, who have worked hard on it. So,
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else? Commissioner Powell, again?
And thanks to our board members.
Yes.
Our park board. Thank you. We know this would not happen without your sign-off, so thank you too.
Absolutely, and I appreciate those of you who took the time to come out and tour those park facilities, and want to extend the invitation to to do some in the future as well, for those of you who are interested in coming to see them. I think once you see them, you're going to see the tremendous potential that is there, that has got us so excited. And I want to point out, Commissioner Charles really leaned in very supportively at a critical moment, putting together that Southfield agreement, and that this was a tremendous team effort. I appreciate the acknowledgement of our staff, but it really was across the board, a lot of people leaning in to make this possible.
Anybody else? You know, I was reading, I think it was yesterday, that Wayne County has spent like $40 million of their several $100 million of ARPA money that's out there. We have spent a lot more of it, but of ours, but I appreciate that the work that you did, I think, really meets the intent of ARPA at the community level. This money, you know, as I've read about it, was supposed to come in here and elevate communities that maybe had not been able to invest in themselves for many years for whatever reasons. And so with our new millage and the ARPA dollars, to be able to create the park system of the entire county, I think is really important. I live in an area where there are no county parks, right? Many of you live south of 12 Mile, and I'm really happy to see us take a philosophy of we're going to move forward and elevate county parks across the county in a substantial investment kind of way. It's not just waving a flag. It's not, we're spending ARPA dollars with careful thought, and that's the point that I wanted to make, was there's been a lot of thought and effort that's gone into doing this right, and I'm really proud of all you guys. I think what you're doing is going to really improve Oakland County quality of life for individuals all across the county for years to come because of what you've done. So thank you.
Appreciate that. We have a superstar planner named Donna Fallon. I want to call her out. This, more than anybody else, her work efforts are shown in the detail, and you can't have her.
Oh, okay. Well, we're glad we do kind of have her.
Yeah, you do. We'll let you borrow her on occasion. Small
Right to the
surcharge.
paycheck, I guess. All right, anybody else? All right, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
We do. Close it.
Moss?
I'm thinking.
Pickleball instead of throwing of 8 yeas or
Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your support.
All right, bye.
All right, next on our agenda, we have 2 closed sessions, and we'll do one, and then we'll open up, and then we'll do the other. So I would like to take a 2-minute break before we start into these closed sessions, if people don't mind. A 5-minute break. Let's,
It's Zoom, so don't worry.
we'll try and start before 5 minutes too,
Oh, man, that would have been
okay?
funny to see, but sad to watch.
Did you ever watch Bed Knobs and Broomsticks as a youngster? Yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind when I thought of old Angela. Because my mom and I used to watch that.
Nobody wants these Nutter Butters?
No, stop.
All right, are we ready?
So,
we went to
we're
Yates.
ready.
All right, the chair will entertain a motion to go into closed session. Commissioner McGilvery, supported by Commissioner Long. Do we vote?
Yes, we do need
Do we need a roll call?
Do we have to say
Yes.
why we're going into closed session?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, to,
Does somebody else want to?
for James Conahan versus Oakland County and David Bach et al. To consider that case. We're going into
To speak
closed
with
session.
attorneys on that.
Yeah.
Right. And so we need a roll call vote, is that correct? Prompt the
Yeah,
vote?
we can do prompt the vote. Who's McGillivray and Long, right?
Yes.
Yep. Oh, sunshine.
Does prompting the vote count as a roll call?
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, motion carries. So we will
Okay.
now go into closed session.
Stupid.
We're going to leave go-to meeting, and we're going to go to meetings.
White smoke or black?
Nice picture.
We don't have any paper copies, but we've got electronic.
All right, does somebody want to make the motion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner McGilvery.
I would move to,
Wait, I gotta, sorry, we just got that. Okay, sorry.
Okay, Commissioner McGilvery.
in the case of Conahan and versus Oakland County, I would authorize the attorneys to settle this claim and not to,
No.
Oh, no, follow the script.
oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I thought you had it.
Yeah, so in accordance with the directives.
I would recommend,
That bolded part, I move that,
Recommend settle.
Okay.
oh, okay, he should be pointing out.
I need a motion that we,
Gary's got it.
Oh, go out of closed session, we didn't do, did we?
we did that.
Oh, okay.
I move, we need a motion that Corporation Counsel be authorized to proceed in accordance with the directives discussed in closed session.
Yeah.
Gary's got it.
Commissioner McGilvery makes that motion, Commissioner Moss seconds.
A second what
All
you
right,
said.
let's please prompt the vote. Sorry about the protocol mess up.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's not over yet, they gotta announce the vote.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 1 nay.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much.
I've been there, Chris. It's fun.
Been where?
By myself.
You're only
Yeah.
one
See ya.
vote.
Bye, thanks.
Being the one no
Yeah,
vote.
you've been there a few times,
Yeah, it's my favorite place to be.
Okay, yeah.
It's good to be the conscience of the commission, right? Yeah.
Just because of
think you
the,
are.
Yeah.
All right.
Tell everybody.
just because of the other stuff.
That's
Gary
right.
knows.
I thought you were on, but I meant to say no, but it's okay.
We'll see on this one, maybe I'm just not in a
All right, so we have another, thank you, gentlemen. We have another item that we need to go into closed session for, so I will entertain a motion that we go into closed session from Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Moss, with the intention of considering Ransom versus Oakland County et al. With the Corporation
Yeah, it's
Counsel.
crazy. Oh, it's wild.
Right, so we have the motion, prompt the vote, please, to go into closed session. Okay,
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
all right.
We gotta wait till that's off.
The meeting will continue in closed session.
Wait till your mic thing, wait till that go, yeah. You're on air.
I didn't wanna interrupt this.
There's a
is
special
so
knock.
Sorry.
There's a special knock for you.
Yeah, we need to.
Yeah. All right.
Are they still in the main
Gotta bring it back.
auditorium?
They just finished in there. There was like a ceremony going on for the prosecutor's office.
Oh, I wonder what that was, yeah.
Trying to get some photos.
So I did get to visit there.
Oh,
Okay, you're unmuted now.
He was.
So I need a motion that we will, that Corporation Counsel be authorized to proceed in accordance with the directives discussed in closed session. Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner Powell. We can go ahead and prompt the vote.
Okay. Let me just get that.
Oh, sorry. I was distracted. You guys were, did yours come up?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm sorry, who moved that?
It was moved by Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner Powell.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Thank you
very much. Thank you for your questions this morning. Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is public comment. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to address this committee at this time? Seeing no one, I call public comment closed. Any other business? I call this meeting adjourned at 1:58. Oh, my God.